we have Dr. Rangana Rupavi Chaudhari with us. She is an international speaker and she coaches people in spheres of personal development, emotional well-being and spiritual development. I would love to welcome her. Welcome Rangana, Dr. Rangana.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you with us. You know what? I would love to share that I've trained with her and it was an awesome experience. I feel I have got liberated, when I attended your trainings. So it was amazing learning. So if I am an EFT practitioner today, it is because of Rangana. NLP I've learned from her, Matrix I've learned from her. She's amazing as a speaker, as a person, it's amazing. So I would love that we can talk some bit about what is EFT so that people get to know.
Emotional freedom techniques is a technique where you tap on specific parts of the body while saying statements out loud, and it's a technique that's been clinically proven to lower stress, fears, phobias, cravings, as well as past negativity, where people feel healthier and more relaxed.
Okay. And how can we use EFT for kids, how can parents use it?
Okay, so I'll cover kids first and then I'll cover parents. So with children, we have three main categories. One is 0 to 5 years old. The next is 5 to 8 years old. The next is 8 to say 12 years old. For some children, 12, 13, they're becoming young adults. So we have like a teenage category, 13 to 15, and yet they are ready to be worked with as an adult. Now, for 0 to 5 years old, they're too young to be able to communicate using words that would be understandable. They communicate in different ways, whether it's non-verbal language or body language. And so the EFT tapping process does use a process where you question and you ask the person how they're feeling, what do they want to work on. So for a 0 to 5 year old, there's two different ways of working. One is you can breathe like that child and you can feel like that child and you can feel what they are feeling, and then you use the EFT or the tapping process on yourself as if you are that child.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
The second way is you can observe. So for example, if you have a child, they're vomiting. As a parent, you can really feel that your child is vomiting. So you would describe what's happening for the child. You would describe, so for example, a statement might be, even though my child is vomiting and I can watch and I'm watching them vomit, I love and accept myself. So you describe what's happening for the child. Or you might say, even though my child is vomiting, my child is a good child. Because for kids, they want to know that they are good and they want to know that daddy loves them and mommy loves them. That's all they want to know.
Yeah.
With adults, we've developed more of a complexity.
Yes.
As children, it's very simple. So that's 0 to 5 years old. The next category, 5 to 8 years old, I might work with a teddy bear with a child, where if I have a teddy bear there, I'll get the child to touch the teddy bear, to tap on the various different points on the teddy bear.
Okay.
And then because the child will not be able to tell the difference sometimes between themselves and the teddy bear, they'll associate how they're feeling when they touch the teddy bear as if they are the teddy bear as well. As adults, we create more separation. And say, for example, if the child feels sad, instead of tapping on themselves, they can tap on the teddy bear, because the child doesn't see a separation between themselves and the teddy bear. And also it's a toy, they're used to having a toy, they're playing with a toy. And if they prefer a doll, they can use a doll or a Star Wars character. It's whatever the child feels most comfortable with. And sometimes if I'm with a child and I don't have a teddy bear with me, I just draw a picture of a teddy bear and then I show them the tapping points on the teddy bear. And once I had this child and he wanted to do everything really fast. So he said, I just put my magical glove on and I just imagine I'm just tapping every single point on my face all at once, because he just wanted to finish it, quickly. So that's how I'd recommend, 5 to 8 years old. Then 8 to 13 years old, they might not be so attached to their toys. And so and they may not want to open up so much. So I remember a case once of a lady whose child in that age group had developed a learning difficulty, and she'd learned EFT, and she went back home really excited, wanting to share it with her child. The child was not interested, didn't want to know, was, no mama, I don't want to learn from you. And so she kept quiet, and then every evening they would have time together where she'd be lying on the bed, and she'd be lifting him up and down from her knees, and they'd be playing a game. And one day he was just snuggling up next to her in their time that's together, and she just said, mama's been doing this EFT thing on herself because mama's been feeling really sad, and mama feels happier when she uses the EFT. And he said, how do you do it?
Okay.
And so in her case, she had to really be vulnerable, open and honest with the child, where the child didn't feel that here's mom wanting to do something to the child. And she gave the child enough space, because what had happened in school was, because his grades were deteriorating, they had asked the mom to take the child out of school.
Oh.
And so this was an added pressure for her also, like as in how is she going to handle it, deal with it. And so then he said, will you show me? So then she showed him, and slowly every day they did maybe 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, and she did it. And what they uncovered was, in school one of the teachers had said something to this child.
Okay.
And that caused the child to shut down, because the child was made to feel stupid.
Oh.
And so then the child thought, I'm stupid, I might as well not do good in my studies, and developed a learning difficulty. The child was a smart, intelligent child. So when the parent worked with the child, then after that, the child became more relaxed, understood that the teacher was not doing it to be mean and horrible to the child, and was able to get their confidence back and overcome that learning difficulty and go back to school. Mom worked with a child for only 3 to 5 days, by the way, no more than that.
Oh.
And you're talking short, tiny little sessions in only that play time in the evening. It was not any professional session the mom did.
Okay.
The most important thing is, though, as a parent, to be honest with the child, and not to come at the child like a parent or authority figure. To come at the child at their level, and to remember, actually, what did it feel like for you to be between 5 and 8 years old? What were those emotions? What were those feelings? What were the experiences you had? And from that place of empathy, to communicate with the child.
Okay. That's helpful. That's really helpful. And what do we do with kids who cannot express, who cannot speak? As in, they express non-verbally,
Yes.
but they do not express verbally.
So if a child expresses non-verbally, they don't have to use words, okay? And so if they express non-verbally, and say if I'm using the tapping process, I might say to them, even though, and I'll do the non-verbal expression. And so if the non-verbal expression is like this, like that's what they're showing. It's like, even though I love and accept myself. So I'll use their non-verbal cues as part of the tapping process. Or, chances are, if they don't want to communicate, there's something else going on. So sometimes I'll just give the child space, or I'll get the coloring pens and pencils out, and I'll ask them to draw how they're feeling, because they're not able yet to express it in words, because they don't understand themselves what they're feeling. Or I'll get them to play act it. So I'll bring all the toys, and I'll say, okay, who are the different characters in this? And this particularly we also do with the journey method, which is a healing method that I teach, where we can get the different toys, and then we'll ask the different members. So for example, if a child's been bullied in school, one of the toys will be the child being bullied. Another toy will be the child. Another toy will be like a special magical mentor or wise person. And so I'll get the child to play act it out and talk it out with each other, because they're not able to express. Or sometimes the child wants to be in their body, they want to move around, so I'll get them to move around. Or a technique that I use not only with children, I use with adults as well, is I'll get them to touch their collarbone, and we can do it together right now. And if you're watching right now, you can do it as well. I get them to touch their collarbone, and I'll get them to express just a sound. And if I'm expressing the sound, I'll touch here and we'll do it together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and I'll just go, ah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'll just do that. And I think, Mama to pagal ho gaya sometimes when you do that, na? And so then I'll just say that with them. Oh, you think your mom's gone mad, and that's okay. You know, if they watch their mom suddenly doing this. And it's just about relaxing them enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Great.
Okay, so that's 5 to 8 years old. Now 8 to 10, again, same thing. You have to be very tender, very mindful, very respectful. And then when they come to their teenage years, so with the teenage years, it's being even more authentic and real, and actually to relate to what might be going on for them, and also realize that they may not want to have a conversation with you. So sometimes I have this one parent who I worked with for over a year in England, and she had a child who was a teenager, and he wasn't doing well in his school, in his grades, and she of course was very worried, which is understandable. So she learned a technique from me called surrogate tapping.
Yeah.
Where I asked her, okay, I want you to tell me, what do you feel your son is going through that he's not meeting the grades? Because the son had been asked to leave the school in London.
Okay.
And so then she described to me what was happening for the son, and then she tapped on that as if she was the son.
Okay.
And she did that for a period of 3 months, and I asked her 3 months later what happened with her child, and sure enough, his grades improved, because she was also worrying less about it, because when she would worry, her child would get anxious and feel that they're incompetent.
True.
So she cleared her stuff, and then also by using surrogate tapping on herself, she helped her son. And in fact, the son's now in university, by the way. He passed his school and he went on to university, and I imagine he's actually going to build a political career one day. He's a very smart, bright child.
I use a lot of surrogate tapping with kids who come to me, with the
Yes.
mothers. The mothers tap on behalf of the kids,
Oh, wow.
and some of the kids who have autism. So it really helps. Rather, I've used it with most kids, whether they have autism or if the parents come to me with teenagers and they say he doesn't listen, but then we don't work with the child and we work with the parent, and it really helps. So I've seen it happen. It definitely really helps.
It's
Yeah.
great to know that you're doing that. I love that.
Yeah. How do we help kids, to overcome anxiety? There's a lot of anxiety these days. So how do we help, parents and kids to cope with it?
Yes. So whenever parents ask me that question, I always suggest to them that they work with their own anxiety first.
Yes.
Because if they know how to cope with their own anxiety, and let me just show it to you right now if that's
Sure.
okay. So if I were working with a parent, I might just ask them, where do you feel anxiety in the body? So if I'm working with you, for example, and I just said, where do you feel anxiety in the body? Just give me a body location now.
I feel it in my foot.
Great, in your foot. So if I'm working with you, this is how I'd use the tapping process. So we'll begin here, and I'll get the parent to say out loud, even though I feel anxious in my foot.
I feel anxious in my foot.
And I would ask them for a number of anxiety. So give me a number.
Number 4.
4. Even though I feel anxiety in my foot.
Even though I feel anxiety in my foot.
And it's a number 4.
It's a number 4.
I love and accept myself.
And what if the parent says, I don't love and accept myself?
Oh, that's such a great question. I'll say to the parents, I'll do one of two things. One is I'll just say, just for now, just say it. If they are new to EFT, and if they know EFT, then I might say, oh, let's work there first. Because you can imagine, if a parent doesn't love and accept themselves, then that's going to weigh in for the child.
True.
So then I'll just ask them, tell me more about that. What's the reason you feel that you don't love and accept yourself?
Yeah.
And then we'd explore that. I just want to complete the foot tapping,
Yeah.
okay? So if I start it here and I do even though I feel anxious
I feel anxious
and it's in my foot,
and it's in my foot.
I love and accept myself.
I love and accept myself.
Then I do the facial points here.
And what if the parent says, I feel anxious for my child, not for myself?
Beautiful. So then we'd say that I feel anxious for my child.
I feel anxious for my child.
I feel really anxious for my child.
I feel really anxious for my child.
I feel it in my foot.
I feel it in my foot. Very worried about my child.
Yeah, I'm just so worried.
I'm just so worried.
I'm so anxious about them.
I'm so anxious about
Because
them.
the truth is,
Because the truth is,
I love them.
I love them.
And I want them to be the best.
And I want them to be the best.
I want them to do the best.
I want them to do the best.
I want to know I'm a good parent.
I want to know that I'm a good parent.
I just feel anxious.
I just feel anxious.
And then I might close just by touching the fingers, which is here.
Yeah.
All this anxiety.
All this anxiety.
It's okay now.
It's okay now.
I come back here even though I feel anxious.
I feel anxious.
I love and accept myself.
I love and accept myself.
And I'll get them to hold it here and just breathe in and out. So even doing this together with you now, I found really helpful, just because you've got lights at me as a photo shoot is going on, there's 2 cameras here, and it brings up the nerves sometimes. So even just doing that with you right now, I feel that I'm a lot calmer.
So this is all that a parent can do, at least while he's feeling whatever that he's feeling.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now with a child, I haven't known that many children to say I feel anxious. I've not known them to use those words.
Yes.
I've known children to use simpler words, like I feel sad, or I'm bad, or I can't do it, I feel scared. They tend to use really simple language from
Or they
my
would
experience.
just keep hugging you, or they would just keep saying godi le lo. That is their way of showing that they are anxious.
And I love it when kids do that, when they say, hold me in your lap. And if they do that, then this is what I would do to them. Come here. So I would do to them, I just let them hold me and I just tap down their back. Okay. Like that. Because that's how I'm using the
It
EFT
calms
tap.
down. Yeah, it really calms down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we tap on the back and we
Right.
go down.
Okay, I just want to get a pillow so I can show it on a pillow. Is that okay? Thank you so much. So if this were my child or anyone's child or your child, you just imagine you've got the child like against your front area. And you just imagine the child is just snuggled, their neck is just snuggled against your neck. And you just tap down the back like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you do that, you see, as a parent, you have to just let them know you love them. And you're just holding them and it's like, I love you. And I'm so sorry you feel this way. I really love you. And the child calms right down.
Yes.
So this is what you can do with a child, is actually have them on your shoulder. I'm going to put this down here.
Yeah.
And there was something else I wanted to share that you'd asked me about.
Anxiety.
So anxiety. So another thing you can do is the finger holds, but you know what it's like with children. You can't get them to sit in one place.
You can do while they're sleeping, no?
You can do while they're sleeping. And so there's something in Japanese medicine, we can do it together.
Yeah.
Where, for example, you get them to hold their thumb, or you can hold their thumb as a parent. So if you were my child, for example, I would just hold your thumb, right? And I just say to you, just breathe. Just breathe, and I just hold your thumb. And the thumb in Japanese medicine has the energy of worry.
Yes.
So I just hold it and I'd feel the pulse. And I would notice when my pulse and the pulse of the thumb comes into one. And I just hold it. And then I'd move to the next finger, the index finger, which is the energy of fear. And again, I would just hold it and I would just feel it. And again, I just hold the next one, and you can do that right now while we're doing this. I'll just hold the finger and feel the pulse. And then I'd hold the next one. And finally the little finger. I just do this with the child. In fact, as a parent, I recommend parents do it in the evening before they go to sleep. When they wake up in the morning, just calms them right down.
Yeah, So great strategies. Lovely. I loved your tips on anxiety for kids. They're awesome. Is there something specific to be kept in mind while tapping for kids?
So I feel the most important is just to be yourself. And if you have your own stuff going on, clear that with whatever method is going to work for you. And to maintain an open communication channel with the kids as well. I feel sometimes, parents, they put rules and regulations and strictures. So boundaries are very important. I'm not saying not to have boundaries with children. I'm just saying that if you create a very heavy rule culture, like you mustn't go out, you mustn't have boyfriends, you mustn't wear makeup, you mustn't do this. And so what that'll cause the child to do is they're not going to tell you anything.
Yeah.
And so to create an environment where there can be an open communication, because this is the thing. It's better that they tell you than do it behind your back.
Yes.
So I believe that creating that open channel is very important.
Many a times, parents fight in front of kids. It happens. I mean, it's unavoidable sometimes. But what is your viewpoint? How can we manage that?
So, I'll probably begin by sharing a story where I was giving a seminar on inner child healing. And there was a parent there who went back to a memory. And the memory was, as a child, sitting around the breakfast table and the parents were fighting. And the child just wanted to disappear. They just wanted the ground to open and be swallowed up because the trauma of having both parents fighting was so significant, because the child, number one, blame themselves that they're fighting. Number two, they also make a decision then as well. And the child made a decision that it's bad to fight, it's bad to get angry, I must never fight. So they shut down passion within themselves. And I've seen this happen time and time again when I work with adults. We go back to a past memory, parents are fighting, they make a decision, anger is bad, I'm never going to get angry again. And then they almost have a robotic kind of lifestyle as a result. So I feel the parent must really understand what it was like for them as a child first and come into that place of empathy. Yes. And so when they're fighting and say the child is there, they have to be really mindful that if the child is there and they're fighting right in front of the child may give that a certain belief system that's negative for the child. Now,
Yes.
There's also nothing wrong with fighting as well, because fighting is part of a relationship, as in that is also part of the way a couple expresses themselves with each other. And chances are, in a relationship, especially if it's a committed relationship, there is a level of security in that relationship where there's permission to fight with each other. Now, the child doesn't understand that though.
Yeah.
So if by any chance the parent fights in front of the child, the parent must then have a joint discussion in private alone, work out together how they're going to explain that to the child. But they must explain to the child, you know what, mom and dad were fighting, and give them some sort of explanation, if it's not private, as to the reason they were fighting, so the child can understand the child is not to blame.
Yeah, and he feels maybe, that is one. And that the child feels, there are disagreements.
Yeah.
And which can be expressed.
Yes.
And that the child is not always the reason for it.
And then also the parent might actually share with the child, a better way for us to have handled that. So give the child the learning that in the moment I just got upset because he or she said something, and that's my stuff.
Yes.
And I need to be more mindful, and tell the child, next time you notice me doing that, stop me. Because I'll give you a health warning for parents. The minute the parent will say that, the child will stop the parent.
Yeah.
And as a parent,
I have witnessed.
Yeah, you have to listen. No, because when I teach kids EFT,
Yes.
they'll go to their parents like, Mama, wo EFT cheese karo, and they'll touch their clothes and they'll say, do that stuff when you're getting angry right now, get it sorted, get it handled, and then come back. And so they can say to the child, stop me in my tracks when I'm doing that.
Yes.
Now also, they can also use that as a springboard for communication with the child. You're going to get angry too.
Yes.
Who did you get angry with? And because chances that they got a sister or a brother, they're fighting too.
Yeah.
And to give them the understanding that fights happen, and then as a family you can do the tantrum tapping. So I have a parent in Hyderabad where every evening the family gets together with a family meeting and they talk about what their day was like. They don't do video games, they don't do Sky TV, they don't do satellite. Instead, they sit as a family, they have a conversation, and each person in the family shares what their day was like, how they felt. And if there was a fight in that day or some kind of disagreement, they do the tantrum tapping together that I showed you earlier.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
as a family.
That's a good one. No?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. I remember whenever I get angry, and I have taught my son to breathe in nice and deep, so when I'm very angry with him, when he's not completed his homework, he'll say, Mama, take some few deep breaths. I'm like so angry with him. I'm like, this is not the time to take deep breaths. I want to get angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's okay to know that you want to get angry, like as a parent.
Exactly.
And sometimes you can say to the child, Mama just needs to get angry right now, and it's not at you.
Yeah.
I just need to get angry. Just give me 3 minutes. I'm going to get angry and come back. And sometimes I'm going to bring the pillow back in. Sometimes what I recommend is the parent goes to the bedroom, closes the door privately, and either bangs the pillow and like gets all the anger out, or squashes the pillow like really tight, like just get all the anger, all the irritation out, and squash it, or says to the kid, you know what, let's all get our anger out. And then in the living room, they get all the pillows, they sit together, they like squash it together, squash. You know how I do it in seminars? I'm like, just beat the pillow, because it just allows it out. Because better out than in, because chances are the parent loves the child, and chances are
most often the parent loves the child.
Yeah, and chances are though it's not really angry because of what the child did. Chances are gussa andar mein already hai.
The child just triggered.
That's it, just a button got pushed. So the parent must also forgive themselves.
Yeah.
And the child will push the buttons more than anybody else. So will the spouse or the partner. These people know the buttons that exist.
Yeah.
And that's all. A button got pushed and woomph, the anger came out. And so the parent can become more conscious also that dekho mera button push ho raha hai, and they can have a training between the child and the parent. Dekho mera button, and they can joke about it.
Yeah.
Mera button push kiya, and the child can also say, Mama, you just pushed my button. Dad, you just pushed my button.
And it's a nice way to become more mindful about what you're feeling.
Correct.
And conveying and expressing it out.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I don't want to eliminate fights, because that's not healthy,
Yes.
I don't want to eliminate expression of emotion, because that's not healthy. Because if you have a muted kind of robotic family, you've taught the child something else now, which is very unhealthy.
There's a lot of good touch, bad touch, and so many of those things that we are teaching kids these days. What is your viewpoint about it? And you worked with so many adults who were abused when they were kids, so I would like you to share that.
Sure. Yeah, I've worked with so many different adults. So I haven't worked as much with kids who have experienced unsafe touch. I've worked with adults who bring up memories as a child when, for example, and it breaks my heart to even share it, for example, a grandparent putting the child on their lap and then touching their breasts, which is highly inappropriate.
Yeah.
Or maybe a parent, a mother and a father, inappropriately touching the private parts of a child.
Yeah.
I've known stories of uncles who peep at the child as they change their clothes. And so when adults come, you see, the thing is, as a child, you're so young. You don't even know what it is. And as a child, when sexual organs are touched, it feels good, because at one hand you're being stimulated, and yet on the other hand it feels not good.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing for the child, because at the one hand, if you're touched in a certain way, it will create a chemical reaction. It'll create energy within the body. Okay, This is natural, this is normal, right?
Yeah.
And yet on the other hand, on the inside you feel this is not right, this should not be happening.
True.
Right? And so when I work with adults, for example, and say we go back to being a child, what they do is use the EFT tapping process to clear the trauma of what it felt like.
Yeah.
Also, they probably didn't feel heard or listened to, or they felt that they couldn't ask for help. So to give them the understanding that what happened was inappropriate, because they were the child, the other person was the adult, and they don't have the ability always to say no, because they don't understand what's happening is wrong,
True.
and it is categorically wrong. And so when I work with an inner child, we're empowering that person to be able to have resources to be able to say no and that it's inappropriate. And then the way we close this session is they take some kind of learning from it. So for example, if they do have children, they have a conversation with their child and say to them, what is safe touch and what is inappropriate touch?
When these people become parents, or in general for parents, it's important that they have a communication. That's
Yes.
what it would be, right?
Yes, and I feel a proactive communication is better than afterwards, where, the child, because affection is so important for the child. Children who don't receive hugging, who don't receive affection from a parent, studies have shown, grow up later on in life with challenges. And so the child must receive safe affection from a parent. And so it's about teaching that child what is good and safe and healthy and loving, and what is inappropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. And having a proactive approach. So how would you talk to a child? What would you start off with?
So the best thing is always I teach in stories, because stories is the best way to teach. So if that parent has their own live example of when something happened, share that example with the child. Otherwise it'll feel theoretical for the child and they'll not understand. And children are very experiential, they're kinesthetic, they're feeling. Show them what a good touch feels like, and then you can just talk them through that. If someone touches your private parts, that's not right, not appropriate.
Yeah.
And you can talk them through it. And if you need to have a diagram there or a picture, you can show them on the picture, what do you mean? And use the words for it. It's a penis, it's a vagina, breast, it's nipples. Use the actual words. Let the child get used to what the words are for those body parts.
Yes, yes. You spoke about inner child. Maybe people don't know what inner child means. So what exactly?
So what an inner child is the us from the past. So for example, when I'm working with people with EFT or inner child healing, sometimes they bring up a past memory. And the memory can be when they're young or can be more recent. And so when they bring up a memory, I ask them, how did they feel at the time? Because the adult can be over it, yet that child back in the past that's stored within their psyche might still be feeling uncomfortable about it. And so when we do EFT or tapping, we do it on the inner child, the past child.
There's a difference between believing in your child and making him feel that he's very good, and expecting from your child. Would you be able to help us out with that?
Sure. I feel always believe in your child, and I feel never expect from your child. Because I feel expectations are very damaging, and expectations not met can create anger. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't room for healthy boundaries. That doesn't mean there's room to explain to a child what would be an appropriate way of communicating and what would be an inappropriate way of communicating. Once you've trained them and you've explained it to them, give them examples, role model it yourself. When they watch you do it, they're like sponges, they'll pick it up. Now, chances are though, if you feel they are not meeting your expectations, chances are the parent is not meeting their own expectations, or someone else in the parent's life is not meeting their expectations. So I actually feel expectations are very deadly for a child, because there's always something that they have to strive towards. And my preference is not to give them something to strive towards that isn't self-motivated within themselves. So if they have dreams for themselves, absolutely support them to reach those dreams. If they have desires for themselves, believe that they can reach those desires, and let them develop their own expectations for themselves. And when they meet them, celebrate. And when they don't meet them, celebrate again.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Rangana, for coming and for sharing. It really helped. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And good luck.
Thank you. We were speaking to Dr. Rangana Rupavi Choudhuri, who is an international speaker on EFT and matrix reimprinting and many other things. Stay tuned to my channel and let's grow together and learn together. Thank you.